LUAN Emotional Podcast, conversations for inspiration on the go. We offer on-the-go inspiration because our whole heart is set on beauty and our best bets are set on art. Wonderful. So, hi Sharonna, it's wonderful to have you here in LUAN Emotional Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Great to see you.
It's been a pleasure seeing your career and how you've evolved since, I don't know, we met maybe through Sandbox, how many years ago? Maybe 6, 7 years ago, I can't recall. And it's been amazing to see everything that you've evolved with your projects. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who this amazing woman is. Sharonna was born in Tel Aviv. She grew up in London. She has a bachelor's in sociology and politics, and she currently lives in Tel Aviv. She's the founder of Dream Me, which is a platform for commissioning art with 500 artists around the world. You can send in any thought, story, mantra, vision, or poem you would like to be artified. And they ship it to your home, printed on frame, or on a phone case or a yoga mat. They have received over 10,000 artworks that have been created in over 50 countries so far. She is the creator of The Big Dream. This is an art installation and event which I completely adore. It started as the largest artwork in the world, puzzled out of yoga mats, envisioning the future of countries and cities. The installation traveled globally, envisioning the future of the world. Imagine how cool is that? And nowadays, it is projected on art buildings, on museums, and historical sites. This is wonderful, Sharonna. So let's start by what cultural changes have you seen that are impacted by art?
So I think it makes sense to start on a personal level with just thinking about Art Basel, which recently happened in Miami, and I wasn't there, but were you there?
No, I wasn't there.
So yeah, it's closer to you, but so I was there 2 years ago, and then I heard this year a lot of 99% of Art Basel was around NFTs and digital art. And I was there 2 years ago with Dream Me, and I was handing people my business card and talking to people, and everyone was actually quite snobby when it came to Dream Me and digital art. I had my little badges and my digital art badges, and I was very, tech meets art meets, digital world. And it's just amazing to see how much the world has changed in 2 years. If I'd have been in Art Basel now, what would have the reactions been? No one can react anymore to digital art with a snobby face, because everyone knows that there's value in digital art, especially when you can bring so many people around the world together around an artwork that isn't necessarily physical. So I'd say that's the first thing that comes to mind in the cultural evolution of how people perceive art. And I've obviously been I've been a pitcher, I've been pitching digital art for over 7 years. So I'm really happy to see where it is now, and how the world finally appreciates its essence and its value.
And it's fantastic to see that, well, actually, did you know that digital art is the type of art that has been having more growth in the past years, right? It actually is having an exponential growth, which is quite interesting, because there's not many types of art that are having that exponential growth around the world. And I completely understand, and I can relate to you about kind of that aspect of seeing kind of snobby digital art. But I think digital art has something incredible, that it creates this immersion, kind of this full 360-degree immersion, and you can play more with emotions, and you can play more with the experience. So the curation that you do for that space or that experience or that art piece, I think it's incredible, because people can actually feel it with more senses. And art per se, it's quite powerful. And now imagine kind of you tune up, no? Kind of you put kind of high definition to that artwork, and now you can sense it with way more senses than any other type of art, right? And you've seen the experiences that are happening around the world, kind of like, Team Lab over in Japan, they broke, record with sales. They actually didn't expect it to sell that much. You've seen the Van Gogh exhibition traveling around the world, right? Right now, there's one coming right now in December in Mexico City, about Monet, about the painter. There's also Super Blue. I don't know if you've been over in
Mm-mm.
Miami, but it's this new museum that it's there's James Turrell, there's Team Lab, and I can't remember the third artist, but it's also fascinating, and it's kind of like gathering different buzz around about what's going to happen. If I could ask you, what would you think would be the future of digital art in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you think this is?
Yeah. I'm going to be biased based on what I do, but if I was to be a trendsetter, and I'm trying to be, I'd say it's co-created digital art. So I'd say, like, one of the challenges I've had with Dreamy over the last 6 years is bringing on some artists that actually want to only create art inspired from their own imaginations. Whereas, like, my whole mission with Dreamy is to bring the dreamer with the idea and then the artist to co-create. And I think we see it with Patreon, we see it with many other platforms, that people are interested in co-creation. And so I think that's like the next big, I hope, because that's like where all my passion and focus is. I think that's like that's like the next wave of art. And I really believe that in 100 years from now, when someone's teaching the history of art, and they're going over the different waves and genres of art, I really think co-created art will be a genre of itself. And I'm
Mm,
really excited to be a part of that.
I love that. And that's also kind of like has more feminine values, right? It's kind of like changing from competition to cooperation. And that, creates a completely different, business.
I love that. Yeah.
And
Only two women can conclude that, but yeah.
exactly. And for example, do you see in the future to be able to co-create, this type of art with more people? So, for example, right now you've done it, right, with the artist and the dreamer. But what about, for example, included people from different backgrounds? I don't know if you've seen this artwork by this Mexican film director, Alejandro González Iñárritu. He created this art exhibition called Carne y Arena that has been traveling around the world, which is it's an immersive experience of what do people feel, what do migrants feel while crossing the border. So you have kind of like, your eyeglasses, and you have this binaural sound system, and literally you're feeling that you are, in the border trying to cross, and there's kids and people are crying and everybody's afraid. And then the police comes and they
Wow.
get you, and they're, kind of like peeing on top of the migrants, and they're, treating you terribly. And it's kind of like opening those empathy doors of what does actually, a migrant go through while they're escaping their country of origin because they're lacking of opportunities and looking for more opportunities. So that instantly creates, that's using art to create empathy towards social problems that we need to address. So imagine in the near future that you could have maybe the artist, the dreamer as well, but also kind of like adding other people from different backgrounds, and have kind of like a complete artwork that's actually talking about, it could be ethical values, or it could be about how we're going to design this new future that's coming. What can you say on that? Do you see that happening soon?
Definitely. And I'm actually thinking back to a few years ago, I had a VR experience where we were in like Syrian refugee camps, and it was as heartbreaking, but also as enabling in terms of, obviously you can't ever feel full empathy because you don't feel it fully, but it was really, really powerful. And I was so moved. Like the rest of the day, I couldn't really speak. But I think definitely adding as many stories and as many layers as possible to any co-creation is where the world is going. And I think that's a huge reason why I started The Big Dream. And I think the more people coming together to create, it's like there's less that can go wrong with that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, let's bring more people together rather than less people together, and let's envision things together rather than less people envisioning together. It sounds a bit abstract what I just said, but like in the core, like that is what the big dream is. Like when we started it 4 years ago, the whole idea was like to envision the future of the Middle East.
Mm.
And I started collecting different dreams from friends and like more well-known people. And there was one friend of mine, he's a journalist, he's been like all over in the world. His name's Itai Engel, and his dream started quite pessimistic. But then as he was speaking more and more about his dream, he realized that, you know, like he does, like a dream is an opportunity to be optimistic as well. So he started like shining some positive light. And then you suddenly see how many other people who are not journalists have quite similar ways of describing their dreams to him. And then you're sort of reminded, like, we're not so different. Even if we've been to, you know, some of the scariest places on the planet, we're all having quite similar dreams. And it was really beautiful at the end to see, you know, that many people in Israel were dreaming about peace and coexistence, and like many people were dreaming about actually ways to travel through the Middle East to get to Asia. And like since then, in the last 2 years, 4 peace agreements have been made, you know, with like the United Arab Emirates and like you know, Morocco, Dubai. And it's like crazy to think that like 4 years ago that was a dream, and like today it's a reality. And I'm not saying in any way that it's credit to the big dream happening, but I think it's really beautiful to see an image and then like a few years later see like, oh wow, like we all had that dream, and now it's manifested. But I'm a definitely big believer in like one, inclusivity and all the projects that I do, like also on a gender level, you know, and in other levels too. So the more voices and the more different voices that we can have in art and co-creation, the better the world will be, in my
Of
opinion.
course. And I think you're pinpointing something really interesting about the possibility to and the power that the collective manifestation actually brings, right? Because you can say it in one way, right? You're actually collapsing a possibility, one of the many possibilities that there could be, right? One of them could be war, right? Another one could be to, you know, to keep things as they were, and another one is to, you know, arrive to these peace agreements. But something fascinating that I find about cultural projects, especially with art, it's kind of like they bring voices together, and through those voices they have kind of like this microphone or this megaphone, right, to actually be able to send that message out to the world. And that's fascinating. So what you did was kind of like collecting everybody's dreams and find that common denominator that most people had in their dreams, and then actually, right, also manifesting it in the sense of making it a reality with yoga mats, and then eventually kind of like the intention is out there, and it has a possibility to be created. So the power that we can have of collective consciousness, it's insane. And I think we haven't actually really explored it yet, because there's so many things that we could even, you know, get scared of, you know, like, wow, do we really have this power together?
Totally. But it's like a really big thing, I think, right? In Mexico, like there's a lot in terms of like the history and the culture, right? That surrounds like collective unconsciousness, right? Like I remember from a little bit of reading.
Yes, of course. And something, for example, fascinating, they go, if you study any culture, you know, it has its backgrounds and it has its problematics. And for example, in Mexico, there used to be this amazing author called Octavio Paz, and in his book El laberinto de la soledad, which I think in English is the solitude labyrinth, that could be the exact translation, I need to check that. But he talks about, for example, kind of like Mexico has, you know, something fascinating and also something lacking, because it actually is lacking kind of like its own identity, and it's a mix of different identities and different cultures. Because like back in the day, it was kind of like, you know, conquered by an imperialism of Spain, no? And then, you know, it tried to be, you know, conquered by France. And then nowadays we have kind of like a modern imperialism of, the US inside in Mexico. And then we have our Aztec and Toltec and Mayan roots, right? Like really, really, really ancient. So it's kind of like a mix of, ancient wisdom and ancient history with also, other things that today are, quite cosmopolitan, right? So I think it's actually kind of like bridging together different aspects of collective culture that's actually creating one of the most fascinating hubs around the world. Right now, if you walk in these neighborhoods, like in Mexico City, let's say Condesa, Roma, Juarez, Doctores, like almost nobody speaks English. Everybody
Wow.
is kind of like, from different parts of the world and are coming to Mexico. And there's lots of, art gigs and music gigs and meditations and sound healings and activities and a lot of, experiences. And I wanted to ask you, um, do you think the big dream eventually you would see it after the pandemic to be able to travel? It could be physically with the yoga mats or the digital immersive art to different countries around the world.
That's the goal. And also the goal is on the second, like of the second 22, to try and unveil it in like at least 15 locations on the same day, because it's going to space 2 weeks later to the International Space Station with the Rakia mission. So I've been speaking to a friend, Isidoro, in Merida, and he is trying to find like a location to project it there. And at the moment, like we're open to having the final artwork on the second, like unveiled in as many places as possible. Like in the Dominican Republic, it's going to be projected on like a flag on the beach. In Norway by a lake, in Tokyo, like in the Shibuya crossing. So like each location will have its own like touch. And yeah, so like one, we're definitely looking for more locations and want to bring this to as many people as possible to see it, and also to inspire people to still enter their dream for the future, because when it goes to the space station, people will get like notifications on their email when their dream is potentially like being projected, and not only that, like how many other people around the world have a similar dream to them. So we're
Wow.
using like natural language processing to like enable people to understand like the dream data and like dream correlations that others around the world are dreaming about similar things to
That's
them.
amazing. So wait, so you're planning to showcase, to project all of these dreams in the International Space Station?
Yeah.
And how does that work? For example, if I'm kind of like a normal user, I submit my dream, and then you need to wait for how many months? And then, like, could you tell us a little bit about the process?
Yeah. So this is specifically for the big dream. Like it's not the day to day of Dreamy where you can just commission an artwork. So on the big dream, you can go to big.dre.me and submit your dream. There's like another month to potentially have it turned into art, and then an additional month to potentially just see it in text in space. But the idea is that you submit your dream and then come 2222, because the whole idea is like take two for planet Earth. You will potentially see your dream like actually visualized in this final like artwork, which is like going to be like a 5-minute video animation of the future of the planet. And then a few weeks later, it's going to be in space and like projected as a hologram, like in the space station.
I love it.
So yeah, you can enter your dream
I
today.
love
And
it. And we in LUAN we share something in common with UAN, with the Big Dream. We're just launching this end of the year. We're launching a gift that we're doing and creating collectively. About we're asking people from different parts of the world if they could share with us what's in it, what's in them, like this thing that they can't stop hiding, this thing that they need the urge to come out and express it, kind of like we all know deep inside in our intuition what are kind of like our gifts to the world. Sometimes we could be a little bit more confused, and sometimes, and it's okay, we've all been through that. And sometimes there are other times in our lives where we could have it like really clear, but deeply inside we know if we're doing kind of like the right thing, in our passion and in the gifts that we were actually came to serve into this world. And the whole project, it's called about showing your fire, right? What is this
beautiful.
gift inside that you wish to share to the world? What is this fire, this kind of like how you're going to ignite it. And I want to ask you, what is something for you that you feel the need to stop hiding?
So I so I think it's like, to be honest, I think it's my biggest strength and my biggest weakness.
Mhm.
And I think I was born with it. I think a lot of people are. Um, like, so I have this bindi right in the middle of my forehead, and it's, for me, in like a spiritual way, it's like the third eye. Like, I was born with a mole right in the middle of my head, and it's like maybe I have too much DMT in my system, because that's where it like comes from in your brain, in the pineal gland. But I think my imagination has its like very dark sides, but also has its very positive sides. And I think that's the inner fire that I was born with, that I'm still on a daily basis working with. So, like, on the one hand, I have a lot of anxiety and I have a lot of fears, and I create like Hollywood movie scripts in my mind of like the darkest, worst possible scenarios that can happen. And I live with it on a daily basis. But at the same time, I also really believe in hope and optimism. So it's really conflicting. Like, it's almost confusing if from my closest friends and my family. It's like, how can you be so scared of this really bizarre thing that you're scared of, yet at the same time be so optimistic about the future of the planet and want to bring everyone together to dream? And I think that's just a fire that's constantly fueling itself, and it's improving. Like, the more that I work on the positive light, the more the darkness goes away. But I don't think I'll ever eliminate fully the dark flame. And I think that's something that everyone has. Like, everyone's inner fire, I think, is something that also weakens them as much as it does strengthen them.
And I think that, what you just mentioned is actually duality, right? So both sides, right? The light and the darkness, right? The white and the black are part of our identity, and I'm part of this kind of like existence. And we just mentioned about fear. I read a few years ago this book called Dancing with Fear that I really liked, and the author talks about how actually fear is wired to take care of us. So, back in the day, it's kind of like if you go down that road, last time a tiger came and he almost ate you, right? So the fear is telling you like, hey, watch out. If you go down that road again, maybe the tiger will see you again, and maybe this time he can eat you. So, take another road, and you're feeling, fear constantly. But nowadays, I think we have so many triggers of fear around us that eventually we're not actually taking, the good or the essence of fear, which is taking care of us. And now we're, sometimes letting, because it's, a big amount of fear, we're letting it paralyze us, right? And how many dreams, talking about dreams with you,
Yeah.
how many dreams are killed around the world because of fear? I think fear is maybe, let's say, what, 98% of the culprit that many dreams are not executed and many dreams are not believed in, just because there's fear. And it could be, let's talk a little bit about that. O sea, there's, fear of failure. That's, fear of ridicule. There's fear of kind of like this, internal exposure outside of your family. There's fear of rejection. What have you seen, the combination between dreams and fear with all the work that you've done?
I think in a lot of ways, fear is the core part of our subconscious, and our subconscious is what generates our dreams. And I think that's why we should never shy away from the fears that come up at night in our sleep dreams or in the day. And I think that's the beauty in entrepreneurs as well, that of course we're scared every day, to get up on stage or to call someone and an investor or potential partner. Every time I'm still shaking. And sometimes I like watch a video of Elon Musk or someone who is just really confident and knows how to get things, just to get inspiration, even though I've like been doing this for 7 years already. But I think, yeah, duality and like fear is very much also what fuels the resistance and the resilience. And I think even in the first time when we did the big dream, I got about 100 no's for like potential sponsors, until in the end, like, one person said yes. And I have all those 100 no's like in an Excel to this day in red, because every time someone said no, I just put them in red. And I didn't give up. I didn't give up on after 80. And it was hard. Every time someone's saying no, you're insecure, you're feeling not, you're not feeling great. But I think with fear comes optimism, which is bizarre, but it makes sense because you're scared, and then you have to kind of like move on, because then what's the point of existence if you're just going to be scared the entire times?
Of course. And I think something fascinating about human existence is that when we're young, right, we actually learn to walk by falling many, many, many times, right? And it was, hurting ourselves and, kind of like feeling that we were not able to move on, no? And I find fascinating that as we grow, we actually kind of give more importance to those falls, right? Kind of like it's like something like if we age more, or as we age, we're actually feeling more fearful. The other day, I went to do a piercing. It's called death piercing, that it's kind of like inside, because I heard that that's for some people it works a lot for their migraines. For me, actually,
Oh,
it's
wow.
miracles. I've had it for 3 months and I haven't gotten one migraine in these 3 months. Hope it stays like that. But I was asking
Wow.
the person that was piercing me about fear, right? What happens with, all the clients that she's received. And she told me something fascinating. She told me it's interesting to see that usually the older the people that come here, the more fearful they are. And if you see kind of like teenagers, they're like, pierce me wherever, it could be my nose, it could be my belly button, it could be anywhere, just pierce me, And I found that fascinating. Have you seen that as well with all the dreamers that you've worked with? Have you seen that kind of
Yeah.
the fearful turns more protagonistic as we age?
I think there's like two layers to it. And I'm thinking about it for the first time now that you're asking. But I think there's layer one, which is we use our imaginations more when we're younger. Like, I'm a bit nervous about the next generation just because of screen use. But overall, when we were children, at least in our generation, we were running around, we were looking out of the window when we were in the car, we were dreaming, we were using our imagination. So I think when you're like freer with your mind and you're dreaming more, you're probably less fearful. That's one. But at the same time, what could be happening with adults is that we're also like carrying a lot of like dream baggage that we might not have executed, if we're going back to execution. It's like we have all these fantasies, these desires, these places we want to go, these people we want to spend time with, and we're not necessarily acting upon them. So then by like holding this like unexecuted dream baggage, we become more fearful in the lives that we live. Like, that's what I'm thinking based on like the experience I have with commissioners who've come to Dreamy, and with myself. And I guess you can relate as well to that, right? Like with
If you had kind of like a magic wand to correct that, what would you do?
hmm, I would I want to say I would eliminate social media, but then we wouldn't have really connected. So I'd like to say that social media legally should be, limited to a certain amount of time per day. Like,
You can
I'm
regulate
not.
it, right?
Yeah,
That's what do you mean? To
exactly.
regulate social media.
To regulate social media, I'm not on it regularly, and I have people as well on my team who actually post on my behalf, which sounds a bit inauthentic. It's just I really don't want to be too much on social media.
Mhm.
um, and I think to actually also encourage through school and through other resources like dream time. There's meditation that's growing in the world, and yoga. But I actually think, for me, meditation is dream time. It's letting your mind drift off and your subconscious just travel to its different journey. But like, I personally dream when I'm dancing. Like, I'm dancing every morning when I wake up, and I just like dream of what I want. And I think that's something that should be encouraged much more. And like, if I had a magic wand, I would just like make every single person on this planet dream for 10 minutes when they wake up, because
Mm.
to dream is what generates optimism, and optimism is the greatest power we have to kind of understand why we're in this life together and how we can improve it.
Of course. And dreams also, they have to do with playing, right? Because, for example, I see my kids, right? They're 3 and 1 year old. And I've seen them that, you know, they dream and they create and they play all the time. So you could have kind of like the cushions of the sofa. They put them together, and it's like my biggest one is like, no, it's a boat. Mom, come, 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 get up. Well, there's whales and there's the sharks and there's the seagulls. And he's obviously in his head, he is literally on top of a boat, no kidding. If
Wow, I love that.
room. And we were playing, and they're these amazing games. And if my husband comes, and they're like, no, no, that's like the biggest dolphin, let's go in. And they're playing all the time. And I think this lack of play, that nowadays there are kind of like few places where we're actually invited to play. For example, I don't know, one of the festivals that I think that it's kind of like a playground, it's Burning Man, right? I feel that it's
Hmm.
a playground for adults, in the sense that you're creating and you're experiencing many things. Of course, there's that part about the drugs and the parties, which is also, it's kind of like a part of it. What would it be? Kind of like
Yeah,
10%, but not the whole essence of Burning Man, right? And the experience that I've had there, experimenting with art, integrating with art, playing around, having this serendipity of see what happens, meeting new people. You're actually kind of like playing. And I think if I could have that magic wand, for me, I would add play constantly and having fun in our lives. I think that sometimes we're taking life way too seriously, and sometimes we can be only, thinking about paying the bills. And like we thought that we come to this world to have, specific responsibilities. And I think, sometimes life is more than that, right?
totally,
And if
totally,
we have the ability to play, then we have the ability to create, and therefore we have the ability to dream, no?
definitely. Yeah, I'm all for that. A world with more play and a world with more dreaming.
Yes. And I want to ask you, what other cultural artistic projects do you love? Tell us about some of your
Yeah.
inspirations. Like what's out there in the world that inspires the big dream and inspires you specifically?
So there's a lot of cool projects that I see on a micro level, like in the last year, specifically in Tel Aviv, just because, like, as I mentioned, I'm not so much on social media, so I'm not so much exposed to what's going on. But like, I've been going to a lot of friends' exhibitions here, and actually, like, different artists that I'm working with around the world through Dreamy are launching amazing products and projects. So actually, Jean, who's the artistic director of the Big Dream, he's just created this really cool collection to inspire people to explore what it means to plant a tree. What does planting a tree even mean? Is planting a tree in one area better than another one? And he's doing all of this through art. So it's mainly like projects that I'm exposed to through the artists that I'm working with and like local activities that are going on. But I'd say like the one of the most um, inspiring words I've heard in the last year, and I feel really guilty that I don't remember his name. I can actually search in my inbox. But he's an artist based in Switzerland. He taught me the word artivist, like
Mhm.
artist activist, and I never heard it before. And he really like reminded me that that is in many ways like what art can do. It can activate people's minds and change people's opinions, because often I'm sure you know as well, like in the art world you're like questioned as to why is art actually making a difference. It's much harder to explain that than something else. And I think in a lot of ways what I've learned in the last year, especially through these projects that I've been exposed to, is how much art really can make a difference, because it's not only inspiring on every sense level, it's also just really educating people in like such a simple way. Like if I'm going back even to like the planting of the trees example. So I'd say there isn't like one thing that pops to my mind, and rather like this whole year has been a reflection for me of how much artists are. Like a lot of them are artivists that are trying to express a message to many people in a way that sometimes we can't do that through a Twitter, like through a tweet or through an article or through,
Of
the
course.
newspaper.
And I love exactly that, word about artivists, because we are all innate artists inside of us, right? We are all constantly creating the life that we want, and we're constantly, creating new things in our projects, in our business, in our families, in our everyday lives. And if that artist inside of us has a specific, a vision of what we actually envision in the future, then eventually
Mm-hmm.
all our artistic expression is targeted or kind of like directed towards something, right? Towards our main intention. And we've seen, amazing artists around the world. I don't know if you know this artist called JR that he created,
Yeah.
in the border between Mexico and the US. He created this amazing art installation, that one image, speaks way more than words, right? We have, other artists around the world, people could like him or not, or her, we don't even know the gender, but about Banksy, for example, right?
Hmm.
He's constantly, sending a message outside. And if you could have kind of like a magic wand with you, what would your message of artivism would be? To do
Mm.
dreams to what? To do dreams to create a new world, to do dreams to reflect on what?
So firstly, JR and Banksy are like my two main inspirations as artists. So it's amazing that you reference both of them. Um, I think like I'm thinking of literally a story that happened to me in relation to the wand. In relation to the wand is 3 weeks ago, I was walking with this flag that includes some of the artworks for the big dream because we needed to ship it to NASA because everything's limited in weight. When Eitan, the second Israeli who's traveling to space, he's taking this flag, and I didn't know you're limited in weight. So I'm like preparing this flag, standing at the crossroad, which at the square where the big dream first started 4 years ago, because that's where they asked me to meet them. I was like, okay, energy wise, this is interesting. And I'm like standing with this flag, and this 96-year-old man like stops me on the road, and he's like, what's that flag for? And I was like, oh, it's a flag with people's dreams and it's going to space. And I was like, he probably thinks like, what? And then I gave him the flag, and I was like, do you want to be the last person to hold it before it goes to space? And he's like, sure. And then I asked him, like, what's your name? What's your dream for the future of the world? And he said, my name's Dov Landau. I'm 96 years old. And I actually survived Auschwitz, and I moved to Israel when I was 15 years old. And my dream is that people will be nicer to each other than they have been in the past. And I believe that the only way that can happen is if they're optimistic. And so, like, obviously I was really moved in that moment, and like he summarized, like, for me what my artivism is, which is, yeah, dreams, bringing them together, making people hopeful. But if I had like this wand, and like, could make people wake up with this one sentence in their mind, it's, today I will dream a little bit more, and today I will be a little bit more optimistic. And not only for myself, like I see even on the Big Dream website, like some people are entering dreams that they have for the future of their own lives. And then it's like, but this is a reminder, like, of course, improve yourself first before you can improve the world. But this is a reminder of, if you can be optimistic for yourself while equally being optimistic for the future of the planet. And through that, everything else I believe can happen.
Change starts with us, right? that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the initial, like the first, planted seed starts with us. And I totally
Totally.
agree with you. I consider myself an optimist too. Like when they ask me about how do I see the world in the future? Yeah, I know we have a lot of problems, and I know we have a climate, change, emergency, and I know that we have, a poverty crisis, and we have, all of this waste problem around the world, and pollution, and we have, so many problems around the world. I get it, but also on the other hand, I am a firm believer of, the evolution of humans and the evolution of consciousness. And I think that it's kind of like this, collective awakening. And, in some part is because of the access of information, right? As we mentioned, also, social media has its good things, even though, yeah, I agree with you that it should be regulated. But, it's kind of like that access to information, it gives us kind of like a whole scope that now we are in the era of self-education, of becoming self-educated, right? You can nowadays, if you're lacking something or you feel that you want to learn something, you go online, and it's kind of like, what do I want to learn? More things about climate change? Do I want to learn more things about, I don't know, business, about art, about anything else? We have kind of like the biggest library in our hands. And that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge is power, because it's not only what we know, but it is power because of the importance that we, of what we do with that knowledge. That's where the power,
Totally.
relies. And I believe that these access to information, it's helping us kind of like raise our consciousness, and eventually, spreading this kind of messages like yours and the ones about, the big dream, to reach a broader audience. And I can't, I really want to ask this question because I want to know if you could be, open and vulnerable enough to share with us what were the challenges that
Mhm.
you faced inside the big dream, because I'm sure there's amazing ideas out there and many people don't execute them because they have the first five people that tells them no, and you've already mentioned about the amount of sponsors that told you no. But what other challenges were you faced? Like, did you felt like a failure? Did you feel that
Mhm.
nobody, was believing in you, that you were kind of like this crazy woman? What was happening emotionally inside, and also, in regarding, the opportunities that doors were closing around you? Could you share a little bit of that?
Yeah, so I think one day that was really challenging for me was when I asked someone quite influential, like, what is their dream for the future? And then they asked me, like, how much I'd be willing to pay them for their dream. And I understood, like, that's their profession, they're a writer. But at the same time, it was like I was coming from a place of just, like, just want your dream the same way I want everyone's dream to inspire this collective image. And then it suddenly made me feel like, am I not doing this in the correct way? Like, am I supposed to fund this and pay every single person for their dream? But then how is that possible if I want to collect, like, billions of dreams? Um, that was like one, I just remember that day specifically because it made me question if it, if this was the right authentic approach to collect dreams.
Mhm.
I'd say another big challenge I've had is, like, I'm doing this with a lot of help from friends, but I'm like with like an amazing team, like 30 friends around the world, and then 30 additional partners that are for the locations, and then the artist director, and then all the 50 artists involved. But I'd say, like, I'm not the greatest project manager, and like, looking back, I shouldn't be the project manager. Like, I would have definitely brought someone else on to like manage this whole thing, um because it's like stressful. It's like, on the one hand, I remember I was like being interviewed by someone in Norway about this project. He's like, wow, you have such a fun life. And like, in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't really, because like I've just got this Excel that I'm going to be going on to write to each person to see if they can help me collect dreams. It's like, it could be so much more fun with maybe a few more people full time, like, involved in the team. um and yeah, like, I think that's another big mistake. Like, I haven't created so much like camaraderie amongst all the team members, but I plan on, like, tomorrow actually changing that dramatically by creating a WhatsApp group, even though I said, like, less social media. But yeah.
That is amazing. And thank you for being so courageous and, open to share that with us. Because I think the instant that you shared this, eventually, we can all relate to you because we've been there, right? And we felt that as well. We're all human. And we know that there's not always kind of like a pink story to everything, right? Sometimes we see kind of like the overnight success, right? Whatever that means. But that was honestly like 15 years of working behind the scenes, right? And for you, could look, from the outside, kind of like a super successful, project. And in the inside, that, you've had, your obstacles and the things that you need kind of like to turn around. So thank you for being so, vulnerable and for being able to share it with us. Thank you. And for example, how do you fund the artists to create those dreams? It's,
Yeah.
100% sponsored. Do you negotiate with them? How does it happen?
So because I'm like all for co-creation and collaboration, at the end we're going to auction off the final artwork, and each artist is getting the same amount. So we're all like splitting it, and then we're also going to donate like a nice percentage to 5 organizations that, once we've collected all of the dreams, are the most connected to the top 5 themes of the dreams submitted so far. So hopefully one in the subject of climate change, one in the subject of mental health, one in the subject of physical health. So that's going to be decided at the end. But I felt like at the beginning I was like approaching a lot of companies, and then I was thinking it would be great to get donations, and we did receive like 2 small donations, and that was mainly to fund like the making of the site, the making, like we've done some physical exhibitions. And then it made the most sense, like instead of hustling now and like reaching out to so many people, it made like a lot more sense that let's all be partners in this, and at the end just sell this final piece.
Mm.
And yeah, whoever will be the lucky owner of it will basically have in their hands like the future of the world envisioned.
And Sharonna, so you have all of these kind of like feminine values ingrained in you. So you're also doing the cooperation, kind of like energy, right? With all the artists. The thing like, okay, let's all be partners and let's all, work together towards this goal. And if we have success in this goal, then eventually we're all going to win and we're going to split whatever we win.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't want it to feel as well like even though I'm a really big fan of Peggy Guggenheim and many other big, like women in the history of art that commissioned artists, I just didn't want it to feel like it's, hi, I'm Sharonna and I'd like to pay you to make this piece. It's exactly what you said. Like I'm so happy that this feels like a project that's created by all of us. And just before our call, one of the artists tweeted how excited he is and how his teacher a year ago in school like really put him down, and now his artwork is traveling around the world and going to space, and all the other artists involved in the project like retweeted it, and it's so fun to see. So yeah.
And also something really fun to see and really impressive to see is that eventually kind of like you created an ideology movement because these artists join you because they share the same vision and they share the same dream with you, right? So they're not only your business partners in the sense of money, let's say, but they're also your partners in the ideology, right?
Totally.
They're part of the movement, and that's why I think that they also joined, and eventually they're like, yeah, if we have earnings in a few years, that's amazing, but I believe in this and I believe in this project, and this is where the spirit is, right? It reminds me a little bit about you. I don't know if you've seen the content of Simon Sinek, that he talks about starting with why, that the why is actually way more important than the what and the when. And most of the times we tend to think about the what and the when constantly, and right now something that you crushed on it, you kind of like were spot on in, is that you've had your why really clear and really simple, and you were able to express that why, and then find other people that were connected at the same time with your why. So
totally
fascinating. I really applaud that because I haven't seen that often. At some point, if you watch his TED talk, there's I think you're gonna have fun with it. You're gonna say like, oh,
yeah, I want to watch it. I love it. Thank you.
This is wonderful. And I wanted to ask you, is there any plan to, in the near future, to do some NFTs or anything with the artworks that have been created? What is your plan with the big dream and the NFTs?
Yeah, so the big dream within itself, like some of the artists, like most of them, I say 70% are in that space already. So that's the idea, to either like sell the final piece as an NFT or sell the final piece as a digital artwork. It all depends on the market. But because we've created like tens of thousands of artworks on Dreamy like 7 years ago when it started, I wanted to create a business model that's a bit different from like the traditional marketplace. So from day one, we always said that we can offer the original dreamer to resell their artwork and make money from their own imagination, which in a lot of ways is what the NFT like model is. So like 6 years ago, like Lynn Doe, she's one of our like returning customers, dreamers. She's an environmentalist, and her artwork turned out amazing. It's like a dream that she had, that she's basically being chased by a human-sized food pyramid while carrying a human-sized iPad. And I was like, wow, that dream and that artwork is like quintessential of the 21st century. So like, are you interested in us reselling this and you'll make money every time? And she was like, yeah, definitely. Like, she was so excited that her imagination was like powerful enough and that the artwork turned out so great. And so that's been within Dreamy's business model for the last 7 years. So we're definitely planning on like expanding that and integrating that in the NFT marketplaces and elsewhere.
That's amazing. I love this. I love where the NFTs are going, right? It's kind of fascinating to be able to see it, because we are, a generation that's going to see that system get disrupted, right? As
Exactly.
model that we were used to. So it's going to be fascinating, kind of like to have a sneak peek of what's going to happen in the next 10 years. I think it's going to be something that we can't even recognize. It's going
I
to be
know. I'm excited about it.
very, very exciting. Amazing, Sharona. So I want to ask a few questions. The idea of this
Hmm.
is kind of like to answer in one or a few words. The idea is something fast that comes to mind. There's no right or wrong. It's just kind of like different expression
Okay.
of you. Okay. So for you, art is
Imagination and inspiration and emotions.
what's your favorite author? Who's your favorite author?
Stefan Zweig.
Hmm. An advice that changed your life?
To not take advice too seriously because everyone has a different opinion.
That's a wonderful, wonderful one. The best quality in humans.
The ability to cry, laugh, and feel compassion.
A,
Three qualities.
amazing. A book that you recommend?
The book that I'm reading right now, which is The Philosophy of Tattoos, and it touches a lot on Mexico, actually.
Really? How come?
Yeah. They're talking about some of the cultures back in the day of tattoo, like they're going through the history of like different. Yeah, I have it near. Oh, I don't have it near me. I can tell you his name. His name is John Miller.
That's amazing. I'm going to read that. Thank you. What feeds your soul?
Dancing and crying and being vulnerable.
The most pressing issue for humanity?
I think that there are so many, and I think we, like you touched on them, earlier. Obviously, the core is the fact that so many people around the world are still hungry and pollution. But I think the most pressing issue is that not enough of us are maybe dealing with that on a weekly or monthly basis to try and improve that a little bit more. As in, there's still so much imbalance, and that can be changed quite quickly if we all put in a bit more.
Totally. If humans can agree on this, you will be very happy.
Humans can agree on coexistence, but
Mm.
it feels like I'm optimistic, so I'd like to say yes, one day humans can agree on coexistence in every nation and beyond nations.
What would you like to scream to the whole world?
It's not just about you or us. Like, I guess it's going back to that.
Mhm.
It's beyond, like, I don't know how to articulate it better. It's like, think about yourself as much as you think about the other.
Something you expect with joy in 2022?
I'm really, like, specifically for me or for the world. I mean, I'm excited about the big dream being unveiled, but I'm also really, really excited about seeing how to execute upon these dreams. Also, myself, how to spend more time like practicing what I'm preaching, which is getting involved in executing some of these big issues. Like for me specifically, it's around the subjects of peace and coexistence where I live
Of
in the
course,
Middle East.
of course, of course. What is it that you have lived that no one could miss experiencing?
Mm, I'd like to say many things, but I feel each person has their own life and their own experiences that they need. But I guess that's something that I'm still longing to experience that I believe I will one day is to meet my grandfather who died before I was born. But I guess it's it's experiencing that longing and that connection to those that have passed away and are in the stars or wherever we believe them to be. And it's being connected to those that we've lost on a more regular basis.
Of course. Being connected through different planes of existence, right?
Exactly.
This is amazing, Sharonna. It has been wonderful to have you here in this episode of LUAN. Thank you for sharing your magic, your wonderful vision, and sharing, I think part of, you know, everything that you've done, I think it talks a lot about kind of like there's no limit. You can have an idea, and sometimes, part of that idea at the beginning could be like, oh my God, this is not going to work. And oh my God, how am I going to get that? And of course, nobody invests in art. And, we have so many ideas kind of like inside that inner critic, especially in a project like this, and eventually see you, expanding it and reaching it to new countries and to new levels. It's absolutely outstanding. So I want to congratulate you on this, and I want to congratulate you for your vision, for your spirit, and for that amazing, creativity that you have, that you started with a dream, and now that dream is a really big reality.
Yeah. Thank you. You're always so inspiring as well.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. It was wonderful to talk to you.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Want to keep the conversation going? LUAN, the world's first emotional museum, designed a global online experience to inspire and explore. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Telegram, and visit our site at luanmuseum.com to engage creatively.